Hello, everyone. It's me, David Chen. I am broadcasting live and also recording this as bonus audio for my Patreon at patreon.com/Dave Chen. I'm here with Melissa Taminga, aka One April Day on Twitter. Melissa, we have just finished watching the 2020 Democratic National Convention. I thought, hey,
Yes.
let's chat about it because it's a different event this year than it has been in
Yeah.
previous years. And I
Hmm.
just think it's interesting to kind of reflect on what's different about it and how effective you thought it was. Now,
Yeah.
full disclosure, neither of us watched the entire thing, right?
Right.
Like we
Right.
watched like the highlights, or I think you described it as you watched most of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you
Partly
did
a lot of I was kind of maybe making dinner while I had it on. The kids were talking, but I was trying to at least sort of get the major elements of it.
so as you reflect back on the past few nights, like overall, how effective did you find this event, and in particular, like compared to previous events, what did you think of it?
Yeah. Before I answer that, can I ask you, what is your normal relationship to the DNC? Do you usually watch the conventions?
I usually watch
Um,
like the VP speech and like the presidential ticket, like the
yeah,
final speech by the
like the
candidate,
final
right?
night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's pretty much I think been mine too. I sort of just get the major speeches, but I'm
But so
not
I would actually say
really into the convention.
by that metric,
Yeah.
I actually watched more of it this year than I
Yeah.
have in previous years, right?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And actually I was thinking about the 4 years ago, I really don't remember that much of it. I my major memory actually is of Hillary Clinton with the balloons, which
Yeah.
but I don't really remember a ton of content from 4 years ago. So I do feel like for various other reasons, maybe besides the convention itself, this one will have more of an impact on me. So in some ways, it's kind of hard to gauge the effectiveness as a convention because everything feels so unnatural right now.
Right. Right.
Um, I think my overwhelming sense just coming off of it was it felt really nice to have what it feels like normal human beings kind of this idea of normal human beings projecting something like leadership for our country.
mhm.
And I mean, with all of the faults, I mean, Biden wasn't necessarily my pick in the primaries. Even Kamala wasn't necessarily my pick, but I just feel like I get a strong sense of these people as human beings who
Yeah.
are basically decent. And that in itself was just at times, I just kind of overwhelmed by emotion at certain times with not even necessarily something that was grandiose, but it just felt like for all of the kind of artificiality of the format of this online convention, there were these moments where I just thought, it's really nice to have human beings in front of me again
Yeah.
and imagine them as leaders.
I think that's a great reflection to begin on. It sounds. Imagine telling yourself that, like the 8 years ago you, like
Yeah.
that this would be the highlight of your month, basically. And it is
Yeah,
surprising how far our bar has moved. But I agree.
really.
We just finished watching Joe Biden's speech, which
Hmm.
I found to be surprisingly effective.
I agree. I was really surprised, actually. Yeah.
I think that a few things to note about Joe Biden's speech. One is that like the conservative media has spent quite a bit of time trying to portray Biden as senile, as unable, like
Yes.
incoherent,
Can't speak.
and
Hmm.
the ability to give a speech coherently in one
Yeah.
sitting
Yep.
kind of puts the lie to that extremely low bar that they set.
Yep. Hmm.
But beyond that, I thought its overall an effective speech is very hopeful,
Yeah.
and probably one of the most impactful moments from the speech is him uh, showing empathy. You know, which
Yeah.
is something we
Absolutely.
haven't seen a lot of in our
Yeah.
in public office right now. Is the
Hmm.
idea that like obviously Biden has talked a lot about the losses he suffered in his own life,
Yeah.
and for him to just say, "Hey, like I know people out there are suffering right now," you know, and
Yeah.
just like just to look out at the country and say, I know people are suffering right now. I know what it's like to suffer.
Yeah.
And, and it's just like, wow, like something like that is so missed. And we haven't had
Yeah.
anything really close to that in years.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it's at once sad that we haven't had that, but also just encouraging that, hey, there is a candidate who can express that sentiment still.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think, I mean, the massive loss of life that we are facing in our country right now, and just the mere fact of Biden acknowledging that and acknowledging how horrible that is, and acknowledging, as you said, that he knows what it's like to lose people that are really close to him, and that he knows that people are in mourning and suffering right now because of that. Um, yeah, that's just really powerful. And I think for all of the political speak, and politicians are always in some sense being performative, I do believe him as a sincere person, that he sincerely feels that compassion and that empathy.
Yeah. I also think that in many ways, this format benefited some of the main people who we saw, right? Like when
Yeah.
you think about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, like I think they did better in this form, or
Yeah,
Biden specifically. I mean, Kamala knows how to work a crowd,
she does.
but like Biden, I just think is better as like a fireside chat kind of guy,
Yeah, kind of more intimate rather than
as
like a
opposed to
big
like trying to like
crowd.
rile up a big crowd,
Right, exactly.
And I think that that was kind of watching the entire sequence of events play out. It really over the last few nights. Uh, One thing that struck me is how incongruous it would have felt if this had been
Hmm.
a normal convention. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like if
right,
it had been
right.
like in a big arena and everyone was like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, everyone," like, "I present to
Yeah,
you the next president of the United," like it just would have been. It would have felt so weird and out of
yeah,
place and even more cringy
yeah.
than it did.
That's such a great point, because I mean, on the one hand, you want to get behind your candidates, but we're facing disastrous circumstances right now. And so yeah, a big roaring convention of a crowd just feels completely wrong. So it's all like the silence of the online format seems like it suited the gravity of what we're going through right now.
Yeah. Um, Couple of other highlights or lowlights or whatever you want to, however you want to refer to it. So overall, I thought Biden's speech was like pretty good. Did the
Yeah.
job it was supposed to do.
Yep.
Uh, I think it was one of the first nights there was this whole roll call of all the different states, right?
Yeah.
And I had a couple thoughts on that I wanted to share. Number one,
Hmm.
I don't know if you saw, but like the media just cannot seem to handle itself when it comes to AOC, right? Like
They, oh,
NBC
it's so
News.
maddening. Yeah.
So what ended up happening was, for those who don't know, like um, AOC kind of like opened the night by
Last night, right?
last night, right? Where she basically submitted a routine procedural motion seconding the
Yes.
nomination of Bernie Sanders, right?
Which is partly the rules of the convention, that
And
if he has enough delegates, then you need the second. Yep.
everyone, like NBC News knew about it. Everyone was briefed on it. Biden's team signed off on everything. Like everyone knew everything. Everyone knew
Yep.
everything. And NBC News sent out a blatantly misleading tweet.
And an
S-
article with a headline.
yeah. And it just was really, really unfortunate. It just felt like a complete unforced error, and I'm sure, and like it started getting picked up by other places like Fox News and New York Post and all these places, and
Right.
it just is like upsetting that even when they like, even after everything
They
that's
knew what
happened,
was happening.
yeah,
Yes.
even after everything that's happening, they still couldn't prevent themselves from engaging in some kind of travesty. So that's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
saddening and upsetting.
And the basic content of the misleading tweet was something to the effect of her seeming to endorse Sanders over Biden,
Right,
right?
or she didn't endorse
Or
Biden.
that she didn't. Yes,
Yeah.
that was what it seemed like. That they were making her out to be doing. So
Yeah.
yeah, throwing this bomb of what seemed like division into something that wasn't divisive at all.
Yeah, she said the tweet was, in one of the shortest speeches of the DNC, Representative Ocasio-Cortez did not endorse Joe Biden, right? And it's just
Right.
like, it's complete garbage. It's like,
Yes.
it's terrible. It's a terrible tweet. They should feel bad, and like, this is not the time we need terrible tweets like that. Like, we actually need the media to be firing on all cylinders. So very,
Exactly.
very disappointing, NBC News. They deserve all the criticism they get.
Yes.
Someone, someone should be strictly reprimanded for that. Okay.
Yeah. And then she was dealing with the fallout of that
Yeah,
all like late into the night last night. Lots of hate tweets and just horrific.
Yeah. So the other thing is, like, they went to like different states, and you got to see, like, typically people would like stand up in place in the arena and say like, the city of New York, blah 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 blah, and
Right.
this time around you got to see like kind of I don't know if they were live or like pre-recorded recordings of like people in the different states.
Yeah.
And what did you think of this? Because there was a post at Discourse blog that was headlined "A definitive ranking of how much each state's DNC roll call felt like a David Lynch movie."
Yeah.
And some of them, and I will say, like, some of the tableaus did feel kind of Lynchian to me, because basically
Yeah.
it's like one person speaking, and then like everyone's wearing masks, they're socially distanced, so like everyone's kind of standing in like some kind of formation, like it's like an M. Night Shyamalan movie or something like that.
Or some version of like American Gothic or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
some
Yeah.
some of that, and some of them were like I felt a wide variety of emotions. One of them is, wow, country is beautiful.
Yeah.
Specifically, this party is beautiful because they chose like lots of different types of people. Indigenous people, Asian people, Black people, Hispanic people, like all
Yeah.
different kinds of
You
people.
get
To
a
like,
sense of what our nation looks
yes,
like in
and
reality.
different like settings too. You see like
Yeah.
the beauty of how big the country is, and it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also stuff that's just like super random and weird, like Rhode Island. There's a guy, there's like a big jacked guy in like a black chef's outfit holding a plate of calamari, and
Right.
the guy I think it was was it the governor? He called it the calamari comeback state.
Right. Like what does that mean? I don't know what that is.
And so,
Oh, yeah.
and then
That
I
was
think
a
like
very
Florida,
Lynchian moment.
like Florida's was also Florida, like Indiana with Pete Buttigieg. Like some of these were also like particularly creepy. Like
Yeah.
they just looked like they just looked upsetting. Some of them.
Yeah.
So I felt a lot of mixed emotion. What was your reaction, Melissa?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of encapsulates like what works and what doesn't work about this whole thing, where you sort of get this sense of this could be really great, and you get these moments of quite powerful emotion, and then you suddenly feel like you're in this very disjointed world of like what's going on. So I mean, the highlights of it felt so kind of powerful, and it really felt like it did represent our country in so many ways that we just normally don't see at a convention. And I think, I would like to be optimistic and think like let's try to hang on to that, and then hopefully that the bad part of it will just go away for the next time that they do it. So, I mean, I think ultimately, if I'm trying to be positive, I felt like it did ultimately work for what they wanted it to be. And I felt like I could just kind of take with a grain of salt the fact that we're doing something we've never done before in trying to do it in this non-live way.
According to people in the chat, folks in the chat, Gary says apparently most of it was live. Very impressed with the production overall. Very few hiccups.
That is really impressive, I guess. Then,
that's another comment that people in the chat have been indicating. Gary said, "Watched all 4 days. Big fan of how it was all produced. The Democrats did a good job when they needed to do." Eddie Bowen says, better produced than most previous pandemic content, such as late night talk and comedy.
It is true. I mean, was thinking, I felt quite impressed with the production level, given the fact that maybe they didn't. I mean, I wonder how much lead time they had of knowing exactly that that's how it was going to go.
Yeah, and overall, I felt like from a production standpoint, there were very few travesties. You know, like there was a few like little
few
things
legs.
here and there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but like overall, it was like, yeah, this is pretty solid from a production standpoint.
Yeah, I agree.
Couple more speeches I just want to talk about. One is Kamala Harris. Just curious if you had any reaction to her speech. I thought it was pretty solid. It was kind of it was very sedate. I thought all the speeches were very sedate. There was very little like I'm riling people up, you know, because there's no audience, so it doesn't make sense to do that.
Exactly.
But also we live in very challenging times right now. So that said, we live in like challenging and uncertain times. What did you think of her speech overall?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that it was, again, like Biden's. I thought it was solid. I don't really have any kind of major complaints with it at all. I felt like she kind of said the things that you want to hear her say. And I almost, again, felt like coming away from it, it was more like, here is a human being. And I think the setting it up with, here's my family, you know, having her family speak and how meaningful it was for them, that kind of context really gave an extra sort of weight and gravity and emotion to her speech, so that in some ways it didn't just feel like a politician saying things that they're supposed to say, but it felt kind of more meaningful in a way that, even if her words themselves weren't necessarily earth-shattering or breaking new ground in any way, it did almost feel like it was breaking new ground, just because of the kind of context and how important it was for her family, and just the fact that, again, she is kind of the first Black woman, first Asian American woman that will be potentially the vice president. So I just kind of felt that fact of it, coupled with, you know, her really just very solid speech, worked for me. What about you?
Yeah, I thought it was very, very solid. I think that something that really struck me was I was seeing like people who were very moved online about like her reflecting on her Indian heritage, you know, and just like see yourself represented on the national stage that way, I think is very
that's
is
so
very
powerful. Yeah,
you know, and it's like I felt I was heartwarmed seeing that sentiment, that like that you know you're going through your life, you're not sure what's gonna, like, you're not even conscious of your own race or where you're from, and then you see someone on stage who like acknowledges her own background as she did in her speech, and then it just hits you like a truck out of nowhere, and I can relate to that a lot, you know.
For sure.
So I appreciated that, like she really took the time to. It was kind of her like introducing herself to the country, and you know, talking about her family, and like here's who I am, here's like what I represent, and here's her on a personal level.
Yeah, and that's interesting, that it's something that I didn't really get from her during her presidential campaign. So it felt like I was suddenly like, oh, I'm kind of seeing her in a new way for the first time. That actually made me feel kind of even better about her as a vice presidential candidate.
There's also this like pointed moment in the speech when she said, "I know a predator when I see one."
Yes, yeah.
I was like,
That was
wonder what you're referring to there.
Right.
But yeah, I thought that was it was a great speech. And again, like kind of like as with all the speeches, unlike any other, you know, national convention speech I've seen in recent memory. So
absolutely, yeah.
Final thing I want to talk about before we wrap up is Barack Obama's speech.
Yeah.
And Barack Obama, I feel like, has gone on a whole journey in the course of the last couple of years.
He really has.
Because he has spent the vast majority of Trump's presidency saying nothing, right? Like because it's kind of a custom or what have you that like it's
like a tradition.
Yeah, it's a tradition that like the previous presidents don't like comment or criticize the actions of the future president, right?
Right.
It's not cool. It's not in keeping with the dignity of the office, right? Yeah, bad form, whatever, however you want to say it. and um, he has definitely backed away from that entire philosophy over the course of the last few months, right?
Right. Exactly.
We saw it at John Lewis's funeral, but we definitely saw it
Yeah.
tonight when he, or not tonight. I'm sorry. I believe it was
Last night,
last night,
I
right? When
think.
he
Yeah.
really laid bare what he considers the stakes of this election to be.
Yeah.
What did you think of his speech overall?
Yeah, I mean, because he has been so restrained in not criticizing, like I've wanted him to say more, but although I understood why he hasn't.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that he is finally like I'm not going to hold back now. I am going to lay out the stakes, and we have 70 something days until this election happens, and I am just going to say exactly what I think. So you get this sense of him, um, again, really like understanding that he needs to use whatever kind of authority that he has as a former president to really let people know what the stakes of this are, and that he's willing to, in a way, put himself on the line. Because I think, in some sense, that he must have known that he's going to get blowback for that. He's going to get criticism, and indeed, all of the news commentators were like, "Oh wow, we've never seen criticism like this
Right.
before from another
Because
president," and
he
that.
has the option to just like sit out. He has the option
Right.
to just not
He
say
didn't
anything.
have to. And
But
so I think it was particularly powerful, and I felt really cathartic and just important for him to do what he did.
it's also interesting to compare it to his previous convention speeches. This was
Mm,
not rousing at all. It
yeah.
was not
It's
like
very
everything's
measured.
going great. Like
Right.
America's amazing. It was
Yeah.
like this is a stern warning about
Yep.
what awaits your future if like this election doesn't go the right way. That the current party in power is basically launching a sustained assault on democracy,
Yeah.
and they are craven people who seek only their own benefit. Like he really
Right.
went in against them in a way that like
He did.
um I don't think he's ever done before. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like
I'm trying to think of another, example of that. No, he hasn't.
and you expect it from someone like Biden who is running in the race, and that's like fine. But this is
Yes.
like Barack Obama has tried to like stay above the fray, and he's like, nope, I must deploy all of the social capital I have to like social and political
Mm-hmm.
capital to prevent this from
Mm-hmm.
happening, prevent what
Yeah.
he sees as a fairly significant catastrophe. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's like you see the contrast there. I mean, the Trump administration has basically been, their platform is just this constant fear mongering, of these imaginary threats, and not facing the real threats of things like the pandemic, but these imaginary trumped up threats. And so when you have someone who is speaking, as you said, kind of sternly in this very measured way, it just feels like this is what a real um, someone speaking about to a real crisis would sound like
yeah,
what a real leader would say in a time of actual crisis, and that part of it too just felt so again cathartic, because that's not what we've had. Someone with that kind of authority and weight and gravitas speaking so plainly about where we're at right now.
the thing that continues to strike me in this time period of our lives is the optimism that these people have.
Yeah.
The optimism of people like John Lewis and Barack
Hmm.
Obama and Joe Biden and
Hmm.
Kamala Harris.
Hmm. Yeah.
Barack Obama had this portion of his speech. I'm going to read from the speech. I'm not an orator on the level of Obama, but this does stick with me. First of all, he says, what we do echoes through the generations. He really wanted to say what we do echoes in eternity, which is what Russell Crowe said in Gladiator, but he had to change it a little bit so it wasn't plagiarism.
Mhm.
But he says, what we do echoes through the generations. Whatever our backgrounds, we're all the children of Americans who fought the good fight. Great-grandparents working in fire traps and sweatshops without rights or representation. Farmers losing their dreams to dust. Irish and Italians and Asians and Latinos told to go back to where they came from. Jews and Catholics, Muslims and Sikhs made to feel suspect for the way they worshipped. Black Americans chained and whipped and hanged, spit on for trying to sit at lunch counters, beaten for trying to vote. If anyone had a right to believe that this democracy did not work and could not work, it was those Americans, our ancestors. They were on the receiving end of a democracy that had fallen short all their lives. They knew how far the daily reality of America strayed from the myth, and yet, instead of giving up, they joined together and said, somehow, some way, we're going to make this work. We're going to bring those words in our founding documents to life, end quote. And that's just something I try to remember these days because I'm a pretty pessimistic person in general.
Yeah, same.
But then it's like people have faced odds that were much more insurmountable than what we face right now.
Yeah. And
even as bad as it seems right now.
Yeah.
Like people have faced odds much more insurmountable and did not give up.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, I just wanted to close on that. But any closing thoughts that you have, Melissa, as we wrap up tonight?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a perfect way to end it too, because I think there is so much room for cynicism here. And, I know many people that are dissatisfied with, just the ticket that we're voting for. But I think what Obama said really drives home the fact that there is never a perfect moment, but we continue to strive forward and like practice hope, as a discipline in a way. And even if the step that's in front of us right this minute isn't perfectly exactly what we want, we're seeing it as just one thing that we're continuing to strive forward and for our ideals that we can constantly kind of work for.
Melissa Taminga, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
I'm on Twitter at OneAprilDay. It's probably the best place to find me.
And you can find me on Twitter at Dave Chensky. That's Dave Chen, SKY. And this audio of this broadcast will be made available at patreon.com/Dave Chen for patrons of my Patreon. Thanks so much, Melissa. And thanks to everyone listening out there. We'll see you again soon.